Hello, and welcome to Hooked on Health. I'm your host, Brian Chambers. Hooked on Health is the show where we present basic, simple information about feeling better, functioning better, looking better. On the first episode, we talked about posture and specifically about standing posture. Now, on Hooked on Health, in future episodes, we're going to talk about healthy eating and healthy exercise, healthy sleep habits, a lot of different things that go into a healthy lifestyle. But the reason that I start with posture and why I emphasize it so much is that it's the most basic thing and it's the thing that's always with us. Eating healthy, that can be something that daunts a lot of people. They're not sure how to plan their meals, or it's really difficult to change their habits. If you love foods that you know aren't good for you, it can be difficult to change. Exercise can be a very challenging thing for people too. Knowing what exercises to do, finding the time for it, etc. And I understand that. I've worked with people on their health for many, many years now. So I remain convinced that posture is the best place to start because it is literally the single most powerful thing that you can do to immediately improve the way that your body's functioning and the way that you feel in terms of your mood and your stress. So last time we talked about standing posture. In today's show, we're going to talk more about sitting posture. I don't know if anybody has heard this expression that seems to be going around. They're saying sitting is the new smoking because so many of us are spending so many hours every day sitting, and that it's causing problems with our blood pressure and problems with our joints. I think that's kind of harsh. Sitting is not as bad as smoking. And in fact, just like standing, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So we are going to go systematically through the components of proper sitting so that when you're at work, if you sit at a desk and work on a computer, like so many people do, it doesn't have to lead to back and neck pain. I promise you. Follow along with me today, and we're going to talk about we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down right now. So this chair is not exactly the typical office chair, but I wanted something that wasn't too bulky and that you'd be able to see. So when you sit down on your chair, this is something a lot of people don't realize, but I hope that you can tap into this and feel it. Let me start over again. When you're standing, what are you standing on? Sorry, you're standing on your feet, right? You take that for granted. The tripod, we talked about it last time. You can feel your weight in your feet and you pivot and you don't even really think about it. That's just, you stand on your feet. Well, check it out. When you're sitting, you are now standing on your sits bones. If you understand what I mean by sits bones, your butt bones, right? We all got them. They're under there. And you want to feel those on the chair. And pardon me if I close my eyes, it makes it a little bit easier for me to feel what it is I'm talking about. I realize that teaching this and doing it at the same time is kind of tricky. But if you follow along with me at home, you're going to get what I'm talking about. You are standing on your sits bones. That means that the bones take the place of your feet. And in the same way that you're able to distribute your weight from left foot to right foot and pivot, you are now distributing your weight on your butt bones. As compared to what? As compared to what so many of us do when we're sitting, if you can get a close in here on the seat, we slump back. You slump back onto your tailbone. You slump back on your tailbone, that plays havoc with your back and your hips. Your body cannot tolerate that. You want to get up square on your sits bones. At the same time, you want to feel your feet on the floor. When you're sitting at your computer all day, you want to have your feet square on the floor most of the time with at least a little bit of pressure into the floor, okay? Some pressure into the floor, sits bones square, and then finally coming up to our shoulders and our head, This is a principle I learned from another practitioner years ago that I admit I don't practice it as well as I should, but we can always keep making improvements. And that is, address the computer with your heart. Address the computer with your heart. What that means is that, of course, you're looking at the computer screen with your eyes, but you are presenting your sternum, your chest, your heart to the computer. By presenting this part of your body towards the screen, it helps you to remember to pull your head back. Before we taped today's show, one of the crew asked if I was familiar with that device that you clip on your shirt and it buzzes at you when you slump. I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with these, but there's a few different products out there like that now. There's one that clips on your front of your shirt. There's one that tapes, they want you to tape this thing under your shirt, onto your skin between your shoulder blades. I cannot imagine dealing with that, but I'm not into tech as much as some people are. But here's my challenge, here's my contention about these technology approaches to correcting posture. They don't really work. Now, don't get me wrong, if anybody out there has one of these things and they're like, I love this thing, it changed my life, it works great, more power to you, great. But what I'm saying to people is you don't actually need them, and I believe that it's not the best approach to improving your posture. The best approach to improving your posture is practicing it. And yet, like anything else, if you practice, you're going to get better. So, I was saying this device, if it buzzes at you when you slump, and then you jerk back up, now that's the only relationship that you've got with the thing, is that little by little you slouch, it buzzes, and you pop back up. It slouches, and you pop back up. It's conditioning you to react to that buzz, but it's not actually teaching you anything about what's going on in your body that actually allows you to sit up properly. So if you devote yourself to just the limited amount of time needed to practice the stuff and get good at it, now you're set. I promise, you're set for life. And you need to be set for life. Because otherwise life is too hard. You're going to end up kind of bent and broken and hurting. And this is all very practical. My point in conveying all this information is to get out of pain. Garden variety pain that most of us suffer from. Low back, hip, shoulder, neck pain, neck tension. It doesn't have to be like that. I promise you. So, I was talking about presenting your heart to the computer screen. And this element, this aspect of heart-centeredness applies to standing and walking too. I'll go off on a little tangent here. Everybody's heard the expression, follow your heart. Follow your heart, right? It's not just metaphysical. It's not just a philosophical thing. It applies to the physical body too. You follow your heart. You lead with your heart. This is good, strict body mechanics. When you're walking down the street, when you're standing, when you're sitting at your computer, you lead with your heart. You follow your heart. All right? Try to remember that, please. Now, I'm talking about all these very strict biomechanical principles and techniques. And here I want to go off on another tangent to emphasize that while it's great to become strict and to be able to maintain these postural techniques as much as possible, it isn't really practical to expect us to be able to do them constantly. We are not robots. We're not robots. You can't just flick a switch and do this and then leave the switch on. We're human beings. We have limitations. We have flaws. We have quirks. We have things about ourselves that we want to express. And what I'm getting at is that it's okay to slouch. If you're working for a long time and you just want to lean back in your chair and relax, of course that's okay. It's important. You need to be able to relax and just, do whatever. But not most of the time. Crossing your legs, for instance, that can be a comfortable stretch. You want to sit, you want to kind of stretch your legs, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. But understand that after more than a little while of doing it, it starts to have a wear and tear effect on the body. I know some Pilates instructors, for instance, who are like, never cross your legs. Don't cross your legs. They act like you're going to break if you do. And I can appreciate their strictness, but I'm trying to find a balance here in allowing yourself to be natural and to enjoy multiple positions of sitting at your computer, but recognize that the default is what I call the default position. Be able to come back again and again and stay most of the time in the default position. So speaking of that, this alone is another really important principle of sitting at work, is where we spend most of our time sitting, is that you want to spend a lot of time on the front edge of your chair. The more that you're back, the more that you're liable to do this. The more that you stay at the front edge of your seat, and that allows you now more easily to put some weight into your feet. So once you get like this, you're much better shape. And I promise you, again, everybody, if you practice this, sitting at the computer, you can do this. And the key is, like so many things, you need to practice it long enough that you get good at it, so then you can do it in a relaxed fashion. If anybody has ever learned how to play a musical instrument or learned a new sport, like if you've ever skied, water skied, or snow skied, you might remember when you're first learning it, man, your muscles are working so hard. Or if you ever learned how to play the piano or play a guitar, your hands are working so hard to form those chords on the keyboard or form those chords on the guitar. But you keep on practicing, and eventually it starts to become easier and you can do it in a more relaxed fashion, right? So the same thing applies to all these postural techniques. And the reason that I emphasize it so much, again, is that it is the make or break aspect of our day-to-day lives. For every little deviation from symmetry and length, whatever little habitual tilt or head forward or shoulders curved, this stuff adds up. We are always, at any given moment, we are always the perfect reflection of everything that ever happened to us. That's one of those like, yeah, no kidding. It sounds so obvious, but think about it for a while. Everything that has ever happened to you, everything that you've ever done, that's brought you to right where you are now. And I'm going to get a little technical here for a second, because what really one of the things that you could say this is all about is not just preventing pain, but preventing injury. Preventing injury. And in the health field, we talk about antecedent and trigger. Antecedent is the word for what came before, everything that came before. Trigger is whatever caused the problem. So I don't know, did any of you ever like bend over to pick something up off the floor and throw out your back? Or reach up to a shelf to get something down high and tweak your shoulder or tweak your neck? Well, that action that led to the pain, to the injury, that's the trigger. Everything that came before it was the antecedent. And people come to me all the time and they're like, well, all I did was bend over to pick something up and I tweaked my back and that never happened to me before. And I say, yeah, it never happened to you before, but there's a first time for everything. And that through poor posture, poor sitting posture, poor standing posture, becoming tight, becoming stressed, eventually it becomes the straw that broke the camel's back, right? You just bend over and ow, you throw your back out. So this is why I'm such a missionary for this stuff, that you've got to practice the basics. And if you do, it becomes second nature, and there's no reason that you can't live to be 100 and still be sitting up tall, standing up tall. So we're off of my philosophical tangent now and back to the mechanics, back to the techniques. So we talked about feet being on the floor. Another element that I want to emphasize to you is the knees being straight forward. This is just geometry, right? We got this plane going this way. We got this plane going this way. And we got this plane going this way. Geometry, 3 dimensions. You just got to get squared up in the 3 dimensions. So, fundamental element that I did not talk about in the last episode on standing posture, I want to talk about right now, is breathing. Breathing. I say you ought to get good at posture because you got to do it anyway. You got to stand or sit. Same thing with breathing. You got to do it anyway, right? And what I have found over the years in assessing people's alignment, musculoskeletal alignment, and their breath is that especially in this modern stressed out world that we live in, people tend to breathe high up in their chest and their neck. They're kind of gulping at the air, and that causes a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders. Other people practice what you may have heard of called belly breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing, where their belly goes in and out. I am in the camp that says you don't really want to practice belly breathing. I am firmly in the camp of Joseph Pilates and of sports medicine coaches about bellows breathing. Put your hands on your rib cage, this lower half of your rib cage. And when you breathe in, you feel it go wide. The ribs go out to the side. And then when you breathe back out, they draw in, and especially in the front. This is such a valuable technique that I continue to get a lot of benefit from. When you breathe out, I've heard Pilates teachers call it knitting the ribs together. You pull it together in the front. This may be a really unfamiliar feeling if you've never tried it before, so just give it a try and keep at it. You breathe in, the ribs go out. You breathe out, the ribs go in, and especially in the front, they pull together. And I got news for you. If you practice this and believe that every time you breathe out, you can focus in and really compress in the core, that is going to tone and flatten your stomach like nothing else. How many crunches can you do? How many times can you go to the gym? Only a limited number of times. But how many times do you breathe in a day? I don't know. Thousands and thousands of times every day. So as many times as you can focus in on that exhalation and sustain it and pull those ribs together, that's going to make the breath much more functional in terms of getting the right amount of oxygen in your blood, and it's going to tone and strengthen your abdomen and your entire core. So extremely valuable. I want to throw out another couple pearls of wisdom, things that hopefully some of these things will click with you and you go, oh yeah, that does make it easier. So it's about the head position when you're sitting. We are hardwired for visual. Our sense of sight is our most powerful one in terms of how much of our brain is devoted to it. And because our eyes are in the front of our head, whatever we're looking at, we tend to orient there. It's called the oculomotor response. Thank you for that side profile view. It's called the oculomotor response. In fact, try it with me now. Just sit up or stand up nice and tall, look straight ahead, and then dart your eyes to the left or to the right. And tell me, when you do that, if you don't feel your head start just a tiny bit to flick in that direction. You're just looking straight ahead, and you dart your eyes one way or the other. Your head, it doesn't jerk, of course, but you feel it go, because we're hardwired that way. Well, again, in our daily lives, where do we spend the vast majority of our time looking? Straight ahead. And that just pulls us and pulls us and pulls us. This is murder, ladies and gentlemen. The neck bones and the neck muscles and the shoulder muscles, they cannot sustain that. Then that leads not only to muscular tension and pain and degeneration of the cervical vertebrae, but it drives that stress response. Most people have heard the expression the fight or flight response. If you have not heard of the fight or flight response, I encourage you to look it up and learn about it. It means that when you are in a stressful situation, you're either going to run away or you're going to have to stop and fight. And that is hardwired into us from our earliest prehistoric times. Well, that's 2 F's, but there are other F's too that go along with that. Fight or flight or freeze. And then the other F's are fetal position, and flexion. And think about this. You maybe have never thought about it, but it's pretty interesting. Our human bodies are all complete. We are completely what's called flexion dominant or flexion biased. Everything flexes, right? This is flexion, this is flexion, this is flexion, this is flexion, flexing in. This is extension. There's just 2 directions, flexion or extension. This is extension. They say that it's fight or flight, and then the other thing is rest and digest. I love this. Extension is rest and digest. That's why in yoga, all these poses that extend you back, open up the heart chakra, get the neck back, they calm your nervous system. They calm your nervous system down. That's why it's so good for you in this rapid-paced, stressed out world. But it's subtle, it's all relative. So relatively speaking, this is fight or flight. Relatively speaking, this is rest and digest. Well, I ask you, where do you want to spend more of your life? In a fight or flight mode or in a rest and digest mode? I promise, it's up to you. Hold your head up. So how do we remember to hold our head up? One of the things that can really help us is instead of looking in front of you, you want to look in your mind's eye at the back of your head. Do it with me now. Tune in and sense the back of your head, and especially the upper back part of your head. Because as soon as you draw your attention there and you're looking there in your mind's eye, your head is going to orient up and back. And it'll get easier and easier. So, practicing this stuff anytime that you can think of it, just tune in and put it together. Now, a lot of people, a lot of my clients, students that I've worked with over the years, they say, well, yeah, I understand, but I forget. And I say, we all forget. There's no such thing as perfection. You just want to practice. The other thing that I hear from a lot of people is they say, well, I get tired, or I get a new kind of pain from trying to sit up straight or stand up straight. And this is the trickiest part, because I can lecture you all day, and I will, about the mechanics and the techniques and the importance of it, but in the end, it's your body. And you have to own the process by which you get there. And that just like with exercise, just like with anything that we are trying to do, you want to never, ever, ever forget the most fundamental important thing is that you're doing these things because you care about yourself. You love yourself, right? So this is self-care, self-improvement. And you're not doing it because I was lecturing you, or your mom or your grandma or whatever said, sit up straight. Somebody was lecturing you, or your inner voice is saying, I'm not adequate, I'm not good, I did something wrong. All these negative self-talk things that we all are guilty of is very self-defeating. So you want to go time out and remind yourself that all of this technical stuff that I'm talking about is all because you care about yourself, and always let it come from that place. That'll make you feel better about it. That'll make you feel more confident about it. And then back to the really practical aspect, I promise you, shoulder pain, neck pain, low back pain, this is the foundation of correcting it. Yes, you want to go to a PT. Yes, you want to exercise and strengthen the muscles. But I'm telling you, having worked with thousands of people over the years, they'll go to their Pilates class or their yoga class, or they'll go to the gym and they'll work out for an hour. But then as soon as they walk out, back out into the world, they're back into their same patterns of postural distortion. So here's my message. If you devote yourself to mastering these elements of posture and reduce the wear and tear on your body and reduce the stress on your muscles, you theoretically may never have pain again, no matter what else you do. Or if you don't, you can go to the gym and go to yoga class and go to Pilates every day and still never get in front of it, because the other 23 hours a day, you're still subjecting your body to wear and tear. So this is my message to you, is that it's inside you. It's inside you. And it's factory installed. There's another basic principle I want to emphasize, is that you are coded for function. You're coded for function. So believe in yourself, and I'll see you at the next episode. Take care, everybody.